Gary Hart didn't dabble in grudges. He marinated in them. While other managers were shaking hands backstage, Gary was planning who to gut next. He wasn't built for respect the locker room etiquette. He was built for Texas heat, brass knuckles, and calling your mother a thief on TV. These five? He didn't just dislike them, he saw them as enemies of the business. Real names, real feuds, real loathing. No kayfabe. Just the kind of hate that makes shoot interviews sound like court depositions. Welcome to the hit list of a man who never forgave and never forgot. Gary Hart didn't just hate Jerry Jarrett, he ripped him apart by name, repeatedly and publicly. In Hart's own words, Jerry Jarrett is a pig, a thief, and a no-good POS. This wasn't some offhand jab in a promo. This was Hart unloading a shoot cannon on a man he blamed for ruining the credibility of Southern wrestling. He wasn't vague either. He torched the entire Tennessee scene as hillbillies pretending they know the business. Hart saw Jarrett as a two-faced money man who exploited the boys, milked cheap heat, and left locker rooms filled with broken promises. While Jarrett built Memphis on comedy bits and food fights, Hart was down in Texas pushing blood feuds and real violence. You can guess which one Gary thought was real wrestling. He also never forgave how Jarrett handled talent. He saw him as a manipulative promoter who buttered up green kids, bled them dry, and then tossed them once the pop died. He'll rob you with a handshake, Hart once told a locker room full of a younger talent. And the kicker? Hart even hated Jarrett's son. He once referred to Jeff Jarrett as the product of a pig and a mark. Gary's takeaway? If I see Jerry Jarrett in hell, I'm leaving. That's not heat. That's scorched earth. He didn't just blacklist Jarrett, he made damn sure anyone who worked with him got side-eyed for life. Gary Hart was old school. He believed you earned respect through blood, scars, and silence. Sting showed up with bleached hair, neon tights, and a chest puffed out like the ring owed him rent. Hart took one look at that and said, "Arrogant bastard." That wasn't gimmick critique. That was Hart calling out Sting's entire personality. He said it on tape, in interviews, and behind closed doors. Sting was green, cocky, and skipped the respect line to play superhero before he understood the script. The hate wasn't about work rate. It was about attitude. Hart once told a reporter, "He walked into our territory like it was Hollywood. We were bleeding for this, and he showed up to pose." Hart had helped craft some of the greatest monster gimmicks in wrestling history. Kabuki, Muta, Brody. He expected guys to listen. Sting? He expected spotlight. Hart said dealing with Sting was like trying to teach Shakespeare to a bodybuilder in a mirror. When Sting blew up in WCW, Hart didn't applaud. He rolled his eyes. Because to him, that was proof the business had sold its soul to TV-friendly egos. And if you think that's harsh, hear this. Hart once said he'd rather book a stray dog than a guy who thinks he's already a star. He didn't name Sting, but come on, who else could that be? Hart didn't just dislike Sting's vibe. He hated what he represented, entitlement without earning your scars. To Gary, Sting was a mascot in a man's sport, and Hart wasn't selling stuffed animals. To Gary Hart, Ken Mantel wasn't just a bad booker, he was a backstabbing weasel who weaponized the locker room. Their hate was political, personal, and violent. Hart accused Mantel of playing dirty politics in WCCW. According to Hart's own book, he believed Mantel manipulated wrestlers behind his back and even set up a physical ambush. That's not paranoia. That's Hart naming names and blaming Mantel for one of the ugliest moments in his career, when the missing link attacked him in the locker room. Hart didn't mince words. He said, "Mantel tried to have me taken out. Not on TV, in real life." He saw Mantel as a snake with a pencil, someone who got his power not through talent, but through phone calls, lying, and using green wrestlers as pawns. It was territorial sabotage, and Hart made sure everyone knew it. In a shoot that felt more like an indictment, Hart claimed Ken Mantel's biggest contribution to wrestling was convincing people he had one. That's not calling someone out. That's throwing them off the roof. He couldn't book a bingo night without screwing the boys on payouts. To Hart, Mantel was everything wrong with wrestling in the 80s. Business-first cowards who hid behind egos and agents. He never forgave him, never worked with him again, and warned young guys, if you hear Mantel's name, walk the other way, or get ready to bleed. This one was quiet, but nasty. Gary Hart never screamed about Bruno, but the disrespect leaked out in interviews, side comments, and bitter quotes. It started when Hart referred to Bruno Sammartino as a regional guy in a world with territories. Translation: he's not the guy, he's just New York's guy. For Bruno fans, that's blasphemy. For Hart, it was Tuesday. He believed Bruno coasted on weak competition and Vince Sears' safe booking. He called the WWF a padded room for soft champions. And when someone called Bruno the greatest of all time, Hart smirked and replied, "Tell that to Texas." Hart resented that Bruno never had to prove himself outside one spotlight, while guys like Brody and Abdullah were bleeding in 4 countries a week. He said Bruno was protected, overhyped, and treated like a hero for doing the bare minimum. And the bitterness got returned. Rumor has it, Bruno refused to work with Hart after hearing the regional champion jab. No love lost there. When asked if Bruno deserved his place in history, Hart once shrugged, "He never stepped in my ring. That should tell you everything." That's Hart at his best, cutting deep with a sentence that says, "I never needed you, and I never respected you." This wasn't some wild blood feud. It was cold, dismissive, and permanent. Bruno was the statue. Hart was the guy spray painting fraud on it. Gary Hart gave Chris Adams his first real break in Texas, and by the end, he wanted to strangle the guy with his own ring rope. In interviews, Hart referred to Adams as a bright young boy, but not like a compliment, more like how you describe a dog that peed on the carpet while solving a Rubik's Cube. The heat was personal. Hart accused Adams of backstabbing, ego-tripping, and disrespecting the veterans who helped him. He once told Bill Mercer, "He's an egotistical maniac who couldn't carry Kabuki's mist bottle." That's Hart saying, "You had a push, and you blew it." Adams was cocky, impulsive, and unreliable. All sins in Hart's world. He reportedly no-showed, demanded better booking, and even tried to outshine guys like Gino Hernandez and angles Hart had laid out. To Hart, that was the worst betrayal. You got the rub, then you spit on it. And he never forgot it. Hart said Adams had the charisma of a bank commercial and the attention span of a fruit fly. Even decades later, when people brought up Adams, Hart would lower his tone and mutter something bitter. The feud never left. He didn't just burn bridges, he made sure Adams was standing on them first. Gary Hart didn't just feud, he filed grievances in blood. These 5 names weren't just on his bad side. They were etched on a wall somewhere in Dallas with the words, "Never again." He wasn't scared to name names, he wasn't scared to throw shade, and he damn sure wasn't scared to let the world know which rats tried to run his house. From Southern promoters he called thieves, to egotists in face paint, to backstabbers who got their teeth in the business, then bit the hand that fed them. Gary Hart had a list, and everyone on it earned their spot. This wasn't wrestling drama. This was a hit list, filed by one of the coldest, most dangerous minds in the business. If this kind of shoot story heat gets your blood pumping harder than a Brody chair shot, hit that like button like it owes you territory money. Smash subscribe so you don't miss the next name we dig out of wrestling's cold case file, and ring the bell like you're warning the boys. Gary Hart's back in town. Stay real, stay brutal, and never trust a promoter who calls you kid.